Hello everyone, it's Chris from ChrisTrains. I know you're not used to seeing me on video, but new PC, 3 monitors, OBS, webcam, thought I'd give something a bit different a try, so here I am down in the corner. If you don't want to see me again, we'll just see what happens. This is about the upcoming 5.0 update of the double-decker, the VIRM double-decker from ChrisTrains. The 4.0 update that came out a year or two ago had this version of the train in it. This was the VIRM M1, the modernized version of the VIRM, came with a new paint scheme and some new features. The 5.0 update mostly has to do with the updated VIRM M3 and M2, so these are now being worked on by the NS in real life. And they come with the new NS Flow color scheme. I think it's a divisive color scheme. When I first started working on this repaint and this update, I didn't really like it. The more I worked on it, the more it grew on me, and then once I saw a complete train set with it on, it's actually not that bad. I think it's kind of nice. It's a fresh, sort of modern new look for the NS. But here it is, ready to play in Train Simulator with version 5 of my update. So, like most of my updates, this isn't just a reskin. There's a lot of stuff changed underneath as well. So let me just fly over to the center of The Hague and I will show you some of the things that have changed. So the first thing to note, if you've used my trains for any amount of time, you might be familiar with these. These are the Atb Magnets. They're part of the scenery objects that you can get free off my website. They send signals to some of my newer trains. This is the Atb On magnet. All of the VIRMs, the old DDIRM, all the way up through the VIRM M3, the modernized M3, will now read the signals from these. That's to say, if you drive over one of these, it will automatically turn the Atb train protection system on or off in the train. You don't need to do it by hand if the person that built the route or the scenario has added one of these into the track. So let's just go ahead and jump into the cab and let's talk about what's new in here. So the first thing that's new is the brake handle over here on the right hand side. You'll notice now it doesn't go all the way forwards. This A position is a position that would be used when the train is not occupied. When the driver's left and the train isn't being used, the brakes would be in that position. That really doesn't serve a purpose in this game. If you get out of the train, it just stops anyway, so this position isn't used anymore. The furthest position forwards now is the T position for throttle or traction, followed by N for neutral. Neutral means no brakes, no traction, and then the 7 brake notches behind here that go all the way up to there, and then the last one is S, which is snelrem, which is the Dutch word for emergency brake, and that's in notch 8. Now, one thing that I have done in this version, in this update, is with the traction handle, if you take the brake handle and dump it into the neutral position, it forces the traction handle back to neutral as well. This obviously isn't how it works in real life. For 99% of players, I've put this here to make it easier for them to play. It means that you can't attempt to use the dynamic brake at the same time as the motors. I considered changing some of the scripts to make this the way it is in the real train, but this is quite an old ChrisTrains product, and spending another week or two working in the scripts and debugging them, trying to make these two levers just behave completely independent of each other, I didn't think it was worth it at this point. So this is a compromise. I think it's a good compromise. It makes the train quite playable. So while we're talking about the brake lever, something new that's changed here, these two lights here, REM and TL. REM, or REM in Dutch, is brake, and TL is treinleiding, which is the train brake pipe pressure. When you move the brake lever now, when you go into position 1, the REM light comes on. That means you've got dynamic brakes. When you move it into position 2, the TL light comes on, meaning you've got pneumatic brakes as well. The other thing you'll notice when it's in position 2 is there's a new light on this side of the instrument cluster called REM Crit. When you're driving with the Atb train protection system, you need to have the brakes in a minimum position for the Atb system to realize that you're braking the way it wants you to brake. On this version of the train, in the VIRM 1, 2, and 3, it's position number 2 on the brake lever. And when you get into position number 2, that REM crit light comes on. In the old version of the train, so the DDIRM and the old non-modernized VIRMs, it's position 1 of the brake lever, but there isn't a light to go with it. So you just have to know that the older versions use brake notch 1, the newer versions use brake notch 2. So while we're talking about the ATB, the older version of my model of this, the ATB light here was an actual light that turned on and off at each position. So when the speed limit changed, the little needle here would jump immediately to position 4 or 6 or 10 or 12, for example. In the real life, that's not how it is. In the real life, it's a needle that spins around the outside of the gauge. So you'll notice now what happens is if I turn on the ATB protection system, that needle now moves around to the outside, or it moves around to the correct position automatically. Yeah, so if I turn the ATB off, it moves back to 0. And then if I start to drive, you'll see as soon as I go over this magnet in the track here, it sends a signal to the train. In this case, it's an ATB on signal, and as soon as the on signal happens, the ATB system turns on like that. So let's just drive this for a minute. If I just overspeed in this, you'll hear the bells, and when I put the brake into position 2, the bells should stop, and we can slow down to the required speed. And the REM crit light tells us that we were in the correct braking position for that particular situation. Just leaving. Again, once you see it on a complete train, this new paint scheme is actually quite nice, I think. Okay, so let's jump back into the cab. There's some new sounds that I've added to the cab. The Dead Man's pedal sound has changed. It sounds more like a pedal now than a click. There's some new sounds for the different buttons in the cab and the different levers and things. And I've added something into the passenger view which is very irritating, but quite realistic. If you've ever ridden on one of these trains in the real world, you will know that when you sit in the passenger view, there's this really irritating squeaking sound. These trains have steel footplates that rub over each other between the carriages, the bits that you would walk on when you travel between the different carriages. They rub together all the time. And as they're rubbing together, they squeak and they squeak and they squeak. And if I just turn the volume up and go into the passenger view, you'll hear that I've added that to this version of, to this update. So the sound actually comes from down these stairs here in the vestibule. But that irritating squeaking sound is pretty much what these things sound like in the real world. Turn that back down. Okay, what else to talk about? Actually not a lot else except for the destination boards. So there's been a big update to the destination boards. The VIRM now uses the master destination list. This is a concept I've come up with where every train from now on will use the exact same list of destinations. You can cycle through these destinations using the keyboard just as always. You can see the destination board is changing there. I've made some little updates to this, so you'll see when we get to Schiphol it has the little airport, or it has the little aircraft icon that goes with Schiphol Airport. Just get to there, so that's the Schiphol Airport symbol. There's something like 140 to 145-ish Dutch stations in the master airport list now, or in the master station list now. This will come to older trains with patches as time goes on. Right now the only trains that support it are the VIRM, so the DDIRM, the VIRM Modernized 1, 2 and 3. The VIRM M1, 2 and 3, the modernized versions, you can preset the destinations in here like you can with the SNG and the Flirt. So by changing the serial number of the wagon when you're building a scenario, you can preset the destinations. In the older VIRM, so the DDIRM and the old VIRM, you cannot preset the destination, but all of the new expanded destinations are in there. So if you connect an old DDIRM to the back of one of these new VIRM M3s, for example, the station names will match all the way up and down the consist. And something else I just need to point out, I've also put in here a lot of stations for 4 or 5 of the most popular fictional Dutch routes, so you can see some of those names coming past here. So those are all in there. If you're interested to see the master destination list, that is on ChrisTrains.com now. It's on the index page, and you can also find it in the help desk. It also lists which trains support it and which trains you can preset these new destinations. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for the 5.0 update. Hope you would enjoy driving this. Obviously the new NS Flow paint scheme. This is coming as a patch, so if you have version 4.0 of the VIRM, you can just install the patch and you'll get all the new functionality going all the way back to the DDIRM. So I've added a lot of these little bug fixes to that. If you have a really old version of the VIRM, so like a version 2 or a version 3, you probably want to use the complete new installer, and that will be coming to the web shops as well for you to download, and also for new customers. But yeah, that's it. So that's the 5.0 update of the VIRM. Big news is the new NS Flow color scheme. So enjoy it, and hopefully I will see you on the next video.